All right, let's talk about one of music's wildest and most persistent legends, the story of Niccolò Paganini. You might know him by his nickname, the Devil's Violinist. We're going to get into the 24 pieces of music that were so revolutionary, they created a myth that would quite literally haunt him beyond the grave. I mean, just imagine hearing music so intense, so full of emotion, that your brain can't process it as human. That's what happened to the critic Ludwig Rellstab back in 1829. He wasn't just hearing a concert. He was witnessing something he thought had to be supernatural. And the crazy part? He was far from the only one who felt that way. So that brings us to the big question, right? The one that's been hanging around for almost 200 years. Was his talent some kind of divine gift? Was it just the result of insane amounts of hard work? Or was it something much, much darker? We're going to peel back the layers of this myth and find out what's really going on. To really get the music, you first have to understand the man, or at least the myth of the man. And believe me, it was a heck of a myth. Let's look at the stories that turned Paganini from a gifted musician into a living, breathing, Gothic legend. And look, these weren't just some fringe rumors whispered in dark alleys. This was mainstream gossip. People genuinely believed he'd made a deal with Satan. Audience members would swear on their lives they saw the devil himself on stage, physically moving Paganini's arm. And the darkest rumors were just, wow, that his violin was strung with the guts of a lover he murdered, or that he perfected his skills in a prison cell. This was the rock star scandal of its day, and then some. So you have to ask yourself, where did all these totally insane stories even come from? Well, the answer isn't in some dusty old book of spells. It's right there in the sheet music, specifically in a set of 24 pieces that completely rewrote the rules for the violin. Get this, Paganini wrote his 24 Caprices when he was a teenager. A teenager! And these compositions weren't just a little bit hard. They were so far beyond what anyone else was doing, it was almost laughable. For the people hearing them, the only logical conclusion was that he must have had some outside help. And this is where it gets really interesting, because this slide breaks down the magic into actual techniques. Paganini was basically inventing a new way to speak with the violin. He's plucking the strings with his left hand while bowing with his right at the same time. He was bouncing the bow across the strings like a skipping stone to get these incredibly fast, repeated notes. He was playing multiple notes at once, making a single violin sound like an entire string section. These things were so new, they didn't just sound difficult. To the audience, they sounded impossible, like sorcery. And the absolute crown jewel of the whole set is the 24th Caprice. You can think of it as the final boss battle for any violinist. Its main melody is so powerful, so iconic, that composers like Brahms and Rachmaninoff, and even rock guitarists today, have been borrowing it and riffing on it for centuries. This wasn't just a piece of music. It was a challenge to everyone who came after him. So, you've got this spark of seemingly supernatural skill, but for a spark to turn into an absolute inferno of a myth, it needs the right fuel. And it turns out, the early 19th century was the perfect cultural tinderbox for the legend of Paganini to just explode. You see, Europe at the time was deep in the middle of Faust mania. The story of Faust, the guy who sells his soul to the devil for unlimited knowledge and power, was the blockbuster hit of the era. So the public was already primed, already looking for real-life Fausts. And then along comes Paganini, a man with seemingly limitless power over his instrument. He was the perfect fit. And they weren't subtle about it either. Look at the names they were calling him. These weren't just generic insults, they were specific demons from their favorite pop culture. In Germany, he's the Witchmaster. In Paris, he's Mephistopheles, the actual demon from Faust. He became a character straight out of their stories, walking and playing right in front of them. And Paganini himself? He couldn't have played the part better if he tried. He looked spooky. He was tall, rail thin, super pale. People said he looked cadaverous, like a walking corpse. His performances were pure theater, full of intensity. Add to that his reputation as a gambler and a ladies' man, and you've got the perfect recipe for a legend. And let's be real, he probably leaned into it. Why not? It was incredible publicity. And if you think people were just speaking metaphorically, listen to this. This is an actual account from someone in the audience in Vienna. He claimed he literally saw the devil standing next to Paganini, guiding his bow. For people in that concert hall, the line between reality and the supernatural had completely blurred. Okay, so we've heard the rumors, we've heard from the terrified audiences, but what did Paganini himself think about all this? Did he just go along with it, or did he have a different explanation? Well, this is where we finally pull back the curtain. And there you have it, straight from the man himself. This is Paganini getting fed up with all the stories. His explanation wasn't a pact with Satan or years spent in a dungeon, it was just work. He's basically saying that people invent these fantasy stories because they can't possibly imagine the amount of dedication and practice it actually took. He even took on that prison story directly. The myth was this dark, romantic tale of him perfecting his art in solitary confinement. The reality, honestly, it's kind of funny. It was just a case of mistaken identity. Some other violinist whose name ended in I got locked up, and as Paganini joked, everyone just assumed, oh, well, surely that must have been Paganini. So if we toss out the deal with the devil, and we toss out the prison myth, what are we left with? I mean, what were the real secrets to his genius? Because there had to be something special going on. And it turns out, the truth is actually way more fascinating than the legend. And it really boils down to these three things. First, a practice routine that was just inhuman. His father made him practice for up to 10 hours a day, starting when he was just a kid. Second, his body was physically unusual. Many now believe he had a condition like Marfan's syndrome, which gave him freakishly long, flexible fingers and a huge hand span. It was a biological cheat code. And third, pure innovation. He developed a whole new way of holding and playing the violin that gave him a level of speed and agility no one had ever even dreamed of. So when you put it all together, the story of Paganini's genius isn't supernatural at all. It's a story of human extremity, extreme practice, extreme biology, and extreme creativity. But that demonic myth he helped create, it would stick with him all the way to his grave and long after. You don't have to take my word for it. Just listen to what another musical titan, the pianist Franz Liszt, had to say. When a young Liszt saw Paganini play, he was floored. He didn't see a demon, he saw a human being pouring a lifetime of passion and pain into his instrument. And that concert literally changed music history. Liszt walked out of that hall a different person. He decided right then and there that he was going to become the Paganini of the piano. And he did. He basically invented the modern piano virtuoso, all because he was inspired by the very human genius of Paganini. But the legend had one last tragic chapter. When Paganini died, he refused the last rites from the church. That was all the proof they needed. The church declared him a heretic and denied him burial in holy ground. And for an unbelievable 86 years, his body was shuttled around, unburied, from cellars to islands. The myth he cultivated in life literally trapped his body in limbo for nearly a century after his death. So, genius or demon? In the end, I think the story of Paganini shows us something incredible. It shows that human talent, when pushed to its absolute breaking point through discipline and innovation, can look so much like magic that we can't tell the difference. His real secret wasn't a deal with the devil. It was proof of the almost supernatural power that's hidden inside all of us.